Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. And if Senator Roberts wants to make a mid-career career change to comedy, I know some people.
I need him teaching.
Bernie Sanders talked about Mr. Schweiker coming with the OECD results, and they were disheartening in terms of where we've been going in recent years compared to the rest of the OECD countries. And one thing I noticed that even in countries that are more diverse than we are, the achievement gaps are lower.
Smaller, yeah.
And what it seemed to suggest in the report was that these OECD countries put more effort in the high-needs schools. And I was very, very happy to see the emphasis that you're putting on principals. And putting principals in the high-needs schools, recruiting them and training them. Senator Hatch and I have introduced a bill that is similar to your transformational leaders proposal. And because principals create the ethos in the school, teachers obviously are the key ingredient in the classroom, but in recruiting teachers and keeping teachers and leading teachers, that's what a principal does. And it's so important that principals become more than like an administrator of a building and be a school leader. So can you just provide some further details on the type of training aspiring teachers, principals would get under transforming leaders?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And let me say that we're challenging everybody to behave in different ways and move outside their comfort zones. But I just want to let this committee know that every day we're trying to look in the mirror and be very self-critical. And I think, frankly, in many ways, we've been part of the problem as well. And so we're trying to change our behavior very significantly. One of the areas where I think we've been part of the problem is we have dramatically underinvested in principals. As I said before, there are no good schools without good principals. I think it was on a visit with Senator Enzi in Wyoming. He talked to a teacher who drove an hour out of his way past a bunch of schools, not for any money, but because he loved that principal and wanted to stay at that school. And you see that time and again where you could pay a teacher $50,000 more, but if they're going to a bad school where there's no leadership, they won't take it. But you put a good principal in there, you got a chance to do it. So we need to think about how we train the next generation of principals, how we train them to take on those toughest of assignments. This is an area where Senator Bennett has huge interest, how they become those turnaround principals. Principals today are CEOs, and we need to train them as such and reward them as such. They have to be instructional leaders. They have to be able to attract and retain talent, probably the most important thing they do. They have to be able to often manage multi-million-dollar budgets. They have to work with the community. They have to work with the media. If we had a great principal in every one of our 95,000 schools, we could all retire. We would be done. Our job would be finished. The schools would heal themselves. And so we can't put enough emphasis on training and preparing the next generation of great principals, but to your point, specifically to go into those historically underserved communities.
And is mentoring, like putting a principal with another principal who has been successful in turning around a high-needs school is, I think, a great way to create and recruit and train principals.
90% of this education is not going to be in some textbook. This is going to be hands-on in the community, working with an established leader. And those kind of residency models, whether they're for principals or for teachers, sort of based more on the medical model, I'm a big fan of.
Every one of us has gone over a little bit. I still have some time left, but I know that each of us would probably like to have an hour with you in this at least. And we're going to continue. This is an ongoing discussion. I really love that you're focusing on progress and growth, and not hitting an arbitrary score. When I introduced this principals bill and talked about it in Minnesota, I had principals talking about the current way of testing, and they called the test results autopsies. Yeah. That you'd give it in April and you get it in June, and kids were going out the door, and it was too late. In Minnesota, we have teachers and school superintendents have talked about tests that they have, the NWEA test. Are you familiar with the Northwest Evaluation
Very familiar with it.
Association exam? And I'm sure there are many like them around the country. It's a computer test. And as you answer the questions correctly, they get harder, and if you do them wrong, they get easier. And you get the results right away, immediately. So in Minnesota, they give them 3 times a year. And so you can measure. This is what I think parents thought we were going to get when we heard about No Child Left Behind. Oh, great, my kid will be tested. The teacher will be able to look at it and diagnose what my child needs. And we had none of that. And so we're going to be able to do this kind of testing, right? Where you can test several times during the year, measure the kid's growth, but the teacher can look at the kids diagnostically, right?
I don't even call it testing. I call it evaluation, ongoing evaluation. And what we're seeing around the country is a breakthrough in this. And I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of great teachers who, as good as they were, they're saying this is taking their teaching to an entirely different level. They're not having to guess anymore. They know whether what they taught students picked up. And things they didn't pick up, they have to reteach, and they have to group different students differently and do differential instruction. That's the tools that teachers desperately need that for far too long they've been denied. And so there's some great programs out there. I think this is going to continue to evolve and get better and better. But that real-time data that tells teachers, that tells the children themselves, and tells parents, these are my strengths and these are my weaknesses. And let me be very clear. If we get real college and career-ready standards in 12th grade, we should know in 9th grade, and in 6th grade, and 3rd grade, am I on track to hit those? There should be no guessing. There should be no surprises when you get to that junior, senior year. We need to back map this all the way down and give everybody that real-time data. And as I look around the country and see schools where we're seeing this remarkable increase in growth and gain, almost every single one are using these formative assessments. It's been an absolutely powerful tool. One final thing I would say, one of the biggest critiques I'm hearing from teachers is this is very rarely being taught at schools of education. This is new technology, new ideas, and we have too many professors of education who have been out of the classroom for too long who don't know anything about this. So all these great young teachers are saying, this is wonderful, it's changing my practice. Why did I have to learn it on the job? Why didn't I learn it before I got to the job?
That's another area I'd love to ask you about schools that teach teaching and how we teach teachers. I've gone way over my time, but most of it was you, frankly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.